There have been 2 textual changes to the resolution, so I will read the correct clauses. First, operative clause number 4 has been transformed into an IC, an introductory clause. So what you need to do is to put, instead of 4, you need to put that this will be the ICI, so the introductory clause I. Okay? The second textual change regards operative clause number 13. I will read the correct clause as it's supposed to be. So, further recommends that Hungary ensures its media laws comply with the, instead of Constitution of the EU, you scratch that and you add the Article 11 of the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union, and that therefore people that hold office may not have ownership of media houses. So I will read it again. Further recommends that Hungary and other member states, so you need to add also and other member states, ensures its media laws comply with the Article 11 of the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union, and that therefore people that hold office may not have ownership of media houses. Yes. Would you like me to read it again? Okay. Slowly. Okay. Further recommends that Hungary and other member states ensure its media laws comply with the Article 11 of the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union, and that therefore people that hold office may not have ownership of media houses. We'll now move on. Who from the committee may I ask to read the clauses, the resolution? France. Please be quiet. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Committee on Civil Liberties, Justice and Home Affairs. Resolution on the question of freedom of the media in the European Union. Is it possible to establish a balance between freedom of expression, privacy rights and national security? What action could the EU take in this respect? How should the EU deal with the developments triggered by WikiLeaks? The Mother European Parliament requests that stricter non-economic sanctions be enforced by member states against press which has not followed the rules of the EU on privacy. Strongly emphasizes that any member state which do not enforce such non-economic sanctions will be subject to EU sanctions. Supports the anonymity of sources, considering that it provides security to the whistleblowers and therefore permits them to give information. Confirms that journalists who have provided the public with reliable information without breaking EU law must never be punished, even if the information concerns the government. Declares that cyberspace is a sphere of free information sharing, the truthfulness of which may vary. Requests that all information concerning human rights, government actions and decisions be published, except for sensitive information. Suggests that member states reduce the length of time the governments can withhold information under the Official Secrets Act. reminds that there is a freedom of media throughout the EU, bearing in mind Article 3 of the European Charter on the Freedom of Press, recommends that governments warn people whose personal data is diffused by WikiLeaks, urges that EU member states which restrict the freedom of press should be sanctioned, emphasizes the basic idea of WikiLeaks to introduce more transparency, further recommends that Hungary and other member states ensure its media laws comply with Article 11 of the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union, and that, therefore, people that hold office may not have ownership of media houses. Instructs the President to forward the resolution to the European Parliament, the European Commission, and the Council of Ministers.
Thank you. Whom from the committee may I ask to hold a speech in favor of the resolution? Former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia.
Thank you, Madam President. Honorable Presidency, fellow delegates, distinguished guests, it is a fast-paced world of technological codependency that we live in. Humanity truly holds a vast scope of data that can be translated into information, and that information may, more often than not, be untrue. However, this is indeed one of the greatest issues of our time. Now, this scope of data is, ladies and gentlemen, no, it's not little white lies that we're dealing with, but rather a vast scope of data that may truly impact and ruin the image of corporations and institutions whose actions may not comply with their mission statement. Hence, I stand here before you to urge you to consider and vote for one of the basic tenets of democracy, freedom of expression. This resolution endorses the notion that institutional transparency should be on the highest of levels. What is more, it relies greatly on the European Union's regulative on privacy, mostly with respect to the European Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union. Freedom in this resolution has been defined as per the British political philosopher John Stuart Mill. He argues that discourse is a truly necessary condition for social and intellectual progress, and therefore any action should be performed with consideration of the respect towards others. The basic principle of the whistleblowing website WikiLeaks is to, in the words of Julian Assange, open government. And this is perhaps this is indeed what our resolution calls for. A more transparent society, and therein a more just society. One may argue that what you do not know will not hurt you, but that it could not be further from the truth. This only means that it is good to succumb to ignorance and to rely on dogmatism, and that, in the view of our committee, is utterly false. There are certain rules to this dangerous game of information sharing. Governments are required to inform individuals when their personal information has been shared by a whistleblowing website such as WikiLeaks. And in conclusion, I stand here before you in the name of the battle against the threats this world of technological codependency poses. Such dangers would probably or would definitely make you vote for transparency. I will urge you to vote for the resolution that will ensure that the government is not working on the down low. Vote for the ever so appreciated liberty whose loss may give rise to murder and devastation. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now continue with factual questions. Belgium, 113.
Thank you, Madam President. What does include Article 11 and Article 6?
May you please speak louder?
What does Article 11 and Article 6 include?
Article 6 and Article 11, what do they include? Yes, former Yugoslavian Republic of Macedonia.
Thank you, Madam President. First of all, Article 6 or Operative Clause 6 just ensures that it is widely known that actually the internet and cyberspace is a zone where information can be shared freely. However, the truthfulness of the information that may be found on those websites may vary.
Yes, Belgium, you may reply.
Thank you, Madam President. That was not a question. It's about Article 6 and Article 11, not OC. The Freedom of Press Charter. In the appendix. And 13, yeah.
Yes, Luxembourg.
Thank you, Madam President. So Article 6 says, the economic livelihood of the media must not be endangered by the state or by state-controlled institutions. The threat of economic sanctions is also unacceptable. Private sector companies must respect the journalistic freedom of the media. They shall neither exert pressure on journalistic content nor attempt to mix commercial content with journalistic content. And now Article Article 11, freedom of expression and information. First one, everyone has the right to freedom of expression. This right shall include freedom to hold opinions and to receive and impart information and ideas without interference by public authority and regardless of frontiers. 2, the freedom and pluralism of the media shall be respected.
'96, France.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm sorry I'm going to ask the same kind of question, but what is exactly the Article 3 of the European Charter on the Freedom of Press, please?
Spain.
Thank you, Madam President. The Article 3 of the European Charter on Freedom of Press says that the right of journalists and media to gather and disseminate information and opinions must not be threatened, restricted, or made subject to punishment.
Portugal, 34.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is about the OC number 7. What do you mean with sensitive information? Thank you, Madam President.
Estonia.
Thank you, Madam President. In our opinion, sensitive information would be an information which might affect person's position and safety in society. Thank you.
Czech Republic, 118. Czech Republic. Yeah, I know.
The question has already been answered, thank you.
Okay. 92, Hungary.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like the committee to define sensitive information as it has been written in our operational clause number 7. Thank you.
That question has already been answered. Would someone from the committee like to repeat the answer, perhaps? Yes, Estonia.
Thank you, Madam President. Sensitive information, in our opinion, is an information which might affect persons' position and safety in society. Thank you.
112, Austria.
Thank you, Madam President. My question regards OC number 3. What exactly is the definition of a whistleblower?
France.
Thank you, Madam President. A whistleblower is someone who denunciates something by giving a piece of information. Thank you.
Romania, 28.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to ask you to exemplify non-economic sanctions. Thank you.
Yes, Malta.
Thank you, Madam President. We have said that non-economic sanctions are not possible because they threaten the journalists. So they are other punishments that are legal punishments, such as the right of voting if the privacy is violated in a harsh way, for example.
Estonia.
Thank you, Madam President. In OC number 11, you say that member states which restrict the freedom of press should be sanctioned. So how should they be sanctioned?
Yes, Lithuania.
Sanctions can be diplomatic sanctions, expulsion of diplomatic, severing of diplomatic ties, suspensions of official visits. Also, it can be boycotts of sport, cultural events, trade sanctions, boycott of flights, restrictions on admissions.
Cyprus, 51.
Thank you, Madam President. It's about OC number 8. It suggests that member states reduce the length of time the governments can withhold information. What is the current length of time and how much will be reduced?
Luxembourg.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, we can't tell the countries, the EU can't tell the countries to what time they have to shorten that sanction because it's different in all the countries. For instance, in Luxembourg, it's 80 years, and in Italy, it's only 30 years. So we asked them to reduce the length, but we can't tell them to what. It should be a great difference, though, from the one before.
Germany, 89.
Thank you, Madam President. To OC7, does this information also include information which is derived on an illegal way?
Can you please rephrase your question or speak louder?
Sure. Does the information which is talked about in OC7 include information which is got on an illegal way?
Is the information obtained in an illegal way included in this? Yes. Yes, Spain.
We include all kinds of information. Information is always the same, no matter the way you got it. It's legal or illegal information. Of course, that people that get information in an illegal way should be punished, but not for giving out that information, but for the means of getting it. This information should always be published, because public must be informed about everything.
Malta, would you like to add a point?
Thank you, Madam President. Spain's intervention was clear, but I just like to add another point that it's a state duty to protect this kind of data, such information. Thank you.
Lithuania, 40.
Thank you, Madam President. What kind of personal data are not allowed to be published without an agreement of that person?
Lithuania from the committee.
Please speak in the microphone.
It's an information from which you can identify a natural person. For example, home address, ID number, or something like that.
The former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia.
Thank you, Madam President. In addition to the question, what are sensitive information, I want to ask, who determines which information are sensitive? Because if, for example, the government determines this fact, then you don't promote democracy. And I think that that was one of your main points. Thank you, Madam President.
Luxembourg.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, there will be the court that has to define what is sensitive information and about state security, and because they are independent of the government.
Yes, Macedonia, you may.
Thank you, Madam President. I understand what you're saying, but I just don't think that you give me the answer to my question, because I asked who determines. The government says, okay, this information must not be published, or whatever else, because if that is so, then you don't promote the freedom of speech.
Could you please ask this question to the open debate, since it's not really a factual question?
Okay, Madam President, thank you.
8, Sweden.
Thank you, Madam President. On OC number 12, could you further explain what you mean with more transparency?
The former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia.
Thank you, Madam President. The basic fundamental concept on which WikiLeaks functions is to open governments, and we actually emphasize and accept the notion that more transparency needs to be introduced, that less secrets should be kept, as was obviously witnessed by the entire world. Thank you.
Bulgaria, 106.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is really short. It concerns OC number 10. I want to ask someone from the committee, please, to clarify or to exemplify what does it mean to warn, and who and which people, or who, like the ordinary people, old people, or just people who are working in the government.
France.
Thank you, Madam President. In order to warn people, the government can do anything. They can send email or just phone the person. And what was the second question? Which people? Well, actually, it is just written that it is people whose personal data is diffused by WikiLeaks, and I think that's clear enough. Thank you.
Denmark, 91.
Thank you, Madam President. There is the possibility of me not understanding OC number 13, but how far does it go? Is it like the state can't own a media house, or is it only like the government?
Luxembourg.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, for instance, in Italy, the government owns 60% of the press, and so it's the government that owns it, so it's actually Berlusconi, and we just think that that shouldn't be the case, because he's got too much influence on the people then, and it's not critical enough anymore.
Yes, Denmark?
We just want to be completely sure, because this is very important. So I understand the Berlusconi, but can a state still own a media house, or is it only a government that can't own a media house?
Germany.
Thank you, Madam President. A state have to own some press, because a state have the duty to inform the public. But not all press should be owned by the state. And OC13 means the press should be not owned by governmental members. Thank you.
Yes, Macedonia, would you like to add a point? I'm sorry, former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia.
Thank you, Madam President. Yes, I would just like to add to the comment made by Germany that actually individuals that hold office should not have ownership of media houses. Obviously, as was stated, the state must own some part. Thank you.
Slovak Republic 29.
Thank you, Madam President. In ICA, you mentioned privacy. Whose privacy are you referring to?
Cyprus.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, privacy, like personal data, like what we've talked before, like ID number or any information that can identify a person. Thank you.
One more question, and then we end the factual questions. $112. Yeah. No. Okay. Yes, 112 Austria.
Thank you, Madam President. I have a question regarding ICA. Where is the line between freedom of press and personal privacy?
Could you please repeat the question louder? Louder.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, you are talking about privacy, so personal privacy of the people, but you're also talking about freedom of press. I want to know where the line is between those two things.
Lithuania.
Thank you, Madam President. And it means that no one can publish personal data and information, whatever it is, because it is said in the Charter of Freedom of Expression and the Charter of Freedom of Media.
This concludes the factual questions. We now move on to amendments. There has been an amendment submitted by a member of the Dutch delegation, and he proposes to delete the entire clause number 11. I would like to ask the delegate to hold a speech in favor of this amendment.
Thank you for the word given, Madam President. I would like to take you to OC 11. In this OC, we can read that this Commission urges that states which restrict the freedom of press should be sanctioned. But actually, this is a pointless OC, because this implies, in other words, that, for example, if someone is a murderer, his whole name, address, telephone number, etc. are allowed to be released. This is, of course, not what the EU wants, and it will also cause safety problems for criminals and ex-criminals. This OC will make Europe less safety, and will also cost many member states a lot of money, because I'm sure that many EU countries will be sanctioned. I would like to say to you to reconsider this OC, and I hope we conclude that we should delete this pointless OC. Thank you.
Who from the committee may I ask to deliver a speech in favor of the clause? Yes, Luxembourg.
Thank you, Madam President. About the OC 11, we have a pretty good example, which is Hungary. And in Hungary, they have a media law which restricts quite a lot of the media. And we just think that it's not good, because the population of the countries should be allowed to know what is going on in that country and know what the decisions and actions are of the government. So, and Hungary is a part of the EU, and the EU should also be in one way responsible that all the citizens of the EU are able to get the information. So that's why we think that this OC is important also for OC 13, and it shouldn't be deleted. Thank you.
We will now proceed with the voting on the amendment. I remind you that there are no abstentions, and the voting begins now. With 30 votes in favor, 104 votes against, and approval of the candidate country, this amendment has been rejected. We now move on to open debate.
Delegate who was holding up the point of privilege to have some problem. We are going to send a person to you. So just wait and they are going to fix your problem.
5, Spain.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to say that people cannot be denied the right to enter into the government of their own country just by the fact that they own a certain kind of company, as you say in OC number 13, that people who own media houses cannot enter. And I think that's completely unacceptable, because by the same way, people who own a weapon company should not go into the government because they may encourage wars.
Could you please shorten your question, please? And speak
yes,
louder.
Madam President. I just wanted to say that OC number 13 is unacceptable because you are saying that people that own a certain kind of company cannot enter the government of their own country. Thank you, Madam President.
Malta.
Thank you, Madam President. I represent Malta, but I'm from Italy, so I know the media question in Italy that is quite controversial, because Berlusconi, that is the Prime Minister, owns the 60% almost of the media, and that is really difficult to cope with, because if someone owns a television, decides all kind of information that can be shared. One more thing. It's not the matter that he owns only private television, but as a member of, as Prime Minister or head of the government, he owns the television of the state too. and that is 100% control of media. And I can tell you that in Italy some pieces of information will never be known.
Italy, 70.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to show the attention of the Presidency to the Operative Clause number 3 and to the IC number I, which was the OC4. I strongly believe that the committee should have found the right balance between the need of transparency for an equal public information and an element which deserves our attention in terms of confidential information. So why don't you take care of it? Thank you.
Yes, Spain.
Thank you, Madam President. The committee did found the balance between privacy rights and having access to information. As you can see in the operative clauses from 1 to 4, when we are talking about defending privacy, and on the other OCs that are about the right of citizens to get informed.
Lithuania, 18.
Thank you, Madam President. Sanctions, you mentioned sanctions at least 3 times in your OCs. And don't you think that you're giving too much power to the European Union in the governance of member states?
Luxembourg.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, the word sanctions, it's only stated in those OCs that talk about privacy, right? Because we think freedom of expression is really important, but privacy right is important. Shall I start again?
Yes.
Okay. The word sanctions is used in those OCs that talk about privacy, right? Because we think that freedom of expression is really important, but privacy right too, because every citizen should be informed, should be safe from the press.
Yes, Lithuania, would you like to ask again?
Thank you, Madam President. My question was, don't you think that you're giving too much power to the European Union in the governance in the member states? Not about like privacy, not about freedom, but like, don't you think that the European Union gets too much of power, like controlling what's good for press and what's not? Thank you.
Lithuania.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to see that the rights that will be sanctioned if we don't keep of them are fundamental rights that are stated in Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the Charter of Freedom of the Press, the Charter of Freedom of Human Rights. Those rights are fundamental ones, and whatever it takes, it should be taken sanctions by the European Parliament because it's fundamental rights.
Malta, 56.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to underline the contradiction between clauses number 10 and 12. That's why first the committee seems to be worried about a possible chance of transparency, and then it completely says the opposite, emphasizing the WikiLeaks basic idea of transparency. So my question is, how could it be possible to reconcile 2 opposite proposals in a resolution? Thank you, Madam President.
Bulgaria.
Thank you, Madam President. In OC 10, we talk about personal data. And in OC number 12, we talk about more transparency, but transparency which concerns the governments. And also, OC number 5 also talks about government transparency. And once again, 10 is about personal data, so they do not contradict. We're talking about 2 different things. Thank you.
Yes, Malta.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, I think she clarifies my doubts, but the resolution doesn't say what she's just said, because we can see that the number 12 clauses doesn't talk about the kind of transparency. So I don't think it's really clear. Thank you.
Former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia.
Thank you, Madam President. First of all, I would like to state that operative clause number 10 has the verb warn in it, and warn is used in this context only as a meaning of notification. So we recommend that governments as power bodies within a country actually notify people that their personal information has been published. And thank you. That I think answers your question.
United Kingdom 10.
Thank you, Madam President. I wish to draw the attention of the Assembly to the question posed to the committee. It talks about the balance between national security, freedom of expression and privacy rights. The clauses in your resolution are quite, they kind of pertain towards increasing the transparency. However, while this would increase democracy, it could have terrible consequences which would possibly jeopardize the national security of the countries taking part. I mean, the Official Secrets Act is there in place so that this doesn't happen. So I believe that you're actually moving away from the balance between freedom of expression and national security, which is obviously not really what I think you were trying to do in the question. I also wish to draw the attention to the third part of the question. How should the EU deal with the developments triggered by WikiLeaks? I do not feel that this question has been properly dealt with in your resolution.
Spain.
Thank you, Madam President. I will start by answering the last question of the delegate of the UK. This question, the question about WikiLeaks, has been answered in our resolution because things are not always black or white. Gray exists, and we cannot say WikiLeaks is whether completely good or whether completely bad. It has good and bad things, and we thought about them all in our resolution. And the other questions, the questions about balance between privacy and national security, we did cover that part too. As you may see in the OC number 7, when talking about sensitive information, and in OC number 8, when it talks about official secrets. Because when we reduce the time of official secrets, those secrets might never again be that useful for another country to attack your own country. But then the public will be informed about them.
Former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to repeat my question from before concerning the OC number 7. So here you say that sensitive information should not be published, but I want to ask who determines which information are sensitive, because in OC number 6 you say that the cyberspace is a sphere of free information sharing. So does this mean that some information must not be published because someone, for example the government, says so, because this does not promote freedom of speech, as is the question of your committee? Thank you, Madam President.
Estonia.
Thank you, Madam President. I believe I already have answered to that question. Thank you.
Yes, former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, you would like to add a point?
This one.
From the committee.
Thank you, Madam President. As you may remember, it was discussed also in the resolution concerning constitutional affairs. The courts were mentioned there, and from that you may derive that the courts also need to deal with sensitive information as one issue in the state. The courts would be the ones to define what sensitive information is, due to the fact that they are independent from governments. Thank you.
Austria 103.
Thank you, Madam President. Firstly, I would like to mention that I think you should have included the used articles in the appendix. And I would like to re-ask the question which has been mentioned during the factual questions, mainly if illegally submitted information is allowed to be published as well.
Can you please shorten your question or rephrase it?
Do you want to publish information that has been illegally submitted as well?
Slovak Republic.
Thank you, Madam President. As we told you, it doesn't matter how we got the information or how the journalists got the information. Every information, except from sensitive information, has to be published. Thank you.
Yes, Austria.
And thank you, Madam President. How do you want to be sure if the information is right?
Cyprus.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, I think in OC6 we actually say that we can't actually be sure if the information is true because there's like the internet and the media can publish a very large amount of information, so you can't never be sure if it's true or not. Thank you.
Slovak Republic 38.
Thank you, Madam President. I also want to ask you, you made OC number 4 to an IC, but now there's not really an OC to it. So you have this problem that you can't be sure if information is true or not. You're not really answering the question now.
Luxembourg.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, if we can't be sure if a document is right or wrong, I think that happens quite often. There are some journalistic techniques journalistic methods that they can use to do it. And when the sources are not manipulated, we can be sure that it's right. And there are actually 5 magazines that got the information from WikiLeaks, and they are checking if what is written in the documents is true or not.
And the last question will go to Netherlands. 58.
Thank you, Madam President. I have a question regarding OC10. It recommends that governments warn people whose personal data is diffused by WikiLeaks. But should the governments also check everything on other sites that are really alike WikiLeaks and inform those people too? Because there are more sites on the internet who diffuse personal data. Why only WikiLeaks?
Cyprus.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, I see your point, but where our topic is about WikiLeaks, that's why we only said about WikiLeaks. Thank you.
Yes, Luxembourg, you may add a point.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, the government can't check everything that is on the internet. The internet is way too big. And we talk about WikiLeaks because it's actually the government's duty to check if there's something of the person on it, because WikiLeaks hacked the governments, but the governments saved documents, and they weren't safe enough, as we saw, because there were hackers that could hack them. So now it's the government's duty to protect the citizens whose names are published. And normally if you find data about yourself on the internet, it's often that you publish them on your own. Thank you.
I apologize, but that was not the last question. We have still more time, so yes, you may still ask questions. Okay, next one, Poland, 31.
Thank you, Madam President. I have a question about OC number 6. Does the OC number 6 increase the spam in internet?
Can you please rephrase your question?
Because you want to make more information in internet, to make the media bigger in internet. So wouldn't this increase the spam in internet?
Spain.
Thank you, Madam President. I think I can understand the question of the delegate of number 31. But in response to this, we never talked about getting more information into internet. We just stated that internet is a sphere of free information sharing, and that in every single place where you can find information, it may be true or not.
'95, Finland. I apologize. Oh no. Okay, it's fine.
Thank you, Madam President. I have a question concerning OC 13. What does the committee mean by ownership, and can a government official be a shareholder? Thank you.
Could you please speak louder?
Yes, thank you. What does the committee mean by ownership, and can a government official be a shareholder of a media house?
Luxembourg.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, by ownership, we have been, for instance, in Italy, that Berlusconi is actually owning the media houses so that he can tell them what they have to write. And we don't think that the government should have anything to do with the media.
Yes, Finland, you may ask.
Thank you. You didn't answer my question. Can a government official be a shareholder?
Lithuania.
Thank you, Mrs. President. I would like to see that in the Chamber of Freedom of the Press, there is said that no governmental institutions or public officers can fund the press. So that's the answer.
So the answer is actually no.
Spain, 13.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, first of all, I'd like to give my support to the committee as I completely share their ideas. But regarding whistleblowers, I think that there's a problem because as we are protecting them, some may just give information that isn't true. So I would like to ask the committee how they're going to ensure the truthfulness of the information given, and also if there's going to be any kind of punishment to people who do not give true information. Thanks.
France.
Thank you, Madam President. About the information thing you're talking about, I will just remind you that it's the role of every good journalist to check his sources, and therefore the fact that a source is or isn't reliable doesn't depend on the person or the newspaper who publishes it, or even WikiLeaks. Thank you.
Turkey.
Thank you, Madam President. Do you think that the EU will be able to implement these sanctions fairly, since it may not want to turn certain stronger countries against itself?
Former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia.
Thank you, Madam President. The very fundament of this resolution lies in democracy, and the EU as a supranational body must ensure that democracy reigns within all member states of that union. Thank you.
1, Slovenia.
Thank you, Madam President. I have a question regarding OC number 12. In that OC you state that you support the basic idea of WikiLeaks, but do you think that the European Union should support the WikiLeaks by means of funding in order to introduce its basic idea, this is more transparency? Thank you.
Malta.
Thank you, Madam President. We are not supporting the basic idea. We are emphasizing the basic idea that is transparency. And this basic idea is what WikiLeaks by Julian Assange officially says about itself, what the site is. Because we, as a committee, are not against or in favor of WikiLeaks because it wasn't our topic. So we don't take part on one side or the other, neither in these clause.
Yes, Luxembourg, you may add a point.
Well, I saw some questions on some places. It's not that it wasn't that WikiLeaks wasn't our topic, but it was not our topic to decide if WikiLeaks is good or not, because as Spain already said, the world is not black and white, grey exists.
Bulgaria, 107.
Thank you, Madam President. I was going to ask you about OC number 7, because I thought it was somewhat of a contradiction, but then you contradicted yourself answering the factual questions, and then you answered for sensitive information. You defined it first in the factual questions as information that affects the position, a person's position and safety. And position as in, I thought as in, you know, state and, well, see, what I mean is later you said it should be, sensitive information should be defined by each country's government. And then later you said media houses should be owned by government, but government officials shouldn't have shares in media houses. You know, I would ask on OCs, but you guys keep contradicting yourselves.
Can you please shorten your question?
Okay.
Get to the point.
Can you clear up, I'll ask on only one thing. Can you clear up what you mean by sensitive information, because you said two different things, and does this contradict government actions? Because in most cases, a person's position is affected by how they act in government, and that is government actions.
Former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia.
Thank you, Madam President. The definition that was used for the purpose of writing this resolution concerning sensitive information is as follows, and I will read it. Sensitive information is information which might or may affect a person's position and safety in society. Concerning your second question, an official, a physical individual may not fund the press if he or she holds office. Now, the government, as for example in Macedonia, the government owns one television channel, and it is where the government broadcasts many of its decisions. Now, this is where the government must take part, but not physical individuals, in the manner in which they may impact the public opinion greatly. Thank you.
25, Portugal. Please wait till your microphone is on.
Thank you, Madam President. I completely agree with the resolution, but I would like to ask to the Commission which will be the position, their position, if a publication can generate an international conflict. What is more important for the Commission, freedom of press or international peace? Thank you, Madam President.
Spain.
Thank you, Madam President. The truth is that every single thing politicians do is their responsibility, and therefore we, as citizens, have the right of knowing it. If it may disrupt international peace, he'd better not talk in public.
77, Ireland.
Thank you, Madam President. You suggest in OC 10 that the government should warn individuals if their personal data is going to be released. But WikiLeaks is a private organisation, and you suggested that you would put a government body in WikiLeaks. However, I don't think this is really feasible. So perhaps you're suggesting that the EU actually pays whistleblowers or spies, thereby infringing the EU rules of privacy which your resolution supposedly adheres to.
Lithuania.
Thank you, Madam President. The governments are checking through all information that is released by WikiLeaks, and then they see about their citizens, what the data is used. Then they warn them that they could press charges or ask for WikiLeaks to delete all the information. It's not about spying WikiLeaks, it's about just checking through the released documents.
Yes, Ireland, you may ask.
Thank you, Madam President. You used the word warn. What you're suggesting, it may be too late for these individuals to do anything about their information before it's released. So I'm not too sure if you used the correct word then in your operative clause.
Lithuania.
Thank you, Madam President. The person should know that its data is used and they can ask that it could be deleted.
Czech Republic, 109.
Thank you, Madam President. If I'm right, you want to people to publish everything except sensitive information, even if it's illegal. But you, the EU, who wants it to be published, are also going to punish them. Isn't that a little bit weird?
Luxembourg.
Thank you, Madam President. With the punishments, we only mean when the privacy right is not accepted, then they should be punished. And privacy right, we said that it was about names, addresses, and so on. But if it's about information about the government, their decisions and actions, it should be published because that's about democracy. We should know what our government is doing.
Latvia, 42. Wait for the microphone, yeah.
Thank you, Madam. Just to make sure, you said before that you want to publish all the information even if you don't know if it's right or wrong. But don't you think that you may mislead people and that may have consequences?
Cyprus.
Thank you, Madam President. What we're saying is that all the information should be published, even if it's illegal. But we can't know if it's wrong or right because you can never know. And yeah, thank you.
Yes, former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, may I add that point?
Thank you, Madam President. One thing that I mentioned in the speech was that we paid great attention to John Stuart Mill, and we actually considered one of his statements concerning the existence of false information on air. Namely, why are false information in public beneficial? For one, individuals can detect the erroneous beliefs if they can because they can develop a critical evaluation approach towards everything that they read and do not dogmatize anything. And second, by enforcing greater critical thinking, they can direct their beliefs and opinions and keep them from falling into mere dogma just by virtue of their ability to critically evaluate everything that they read.
50, Netherlands.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. I just would like to point out one thing. In OC 6, you declare that the cyberspace is a sphere of free information sharing, the truthfulness of which may vary. Well, nowadays more and more newspapers are actually moving to the internet. So let's say I'm a newspaper and I just want to publish everything. I don't want to be regulated by the European Union. If I move to internet, I'm free to do whatever I like. So that's quite of a big hole in your resolution, I believe.
Bulgaria.
Thank you, Madam President. Actually, if you are a newspaper and you want to do everything on the internet, I mean to publish everything, this may affect your reputation. Because if you publish certain information that hasn't been checked, this can affect the reputation of your newspaper. Thank you.
Yes, France, you may add a point.
Thank you, Madam President. And actually, we are not saying that you can do whatever you want, but that you can share what information you want. And it's a really different thing. Thank you.
89, Germany. Wait for the microphone today, yeah.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to say that sensitive information, which you talked about very often during this discussion, isn't that something very subjective? So the government or private persons can say, the governments can say what sensitive information is for them on their own. So point 7 is quite useless, because if governments don't agree with information WikiLeaks or other newspapers state, they will just say, all right, it's sensitive information of our actions. So it will be, point OC7 is going to be pretty useless, isn't it?
Slovak Republic.
Thank you, Madam President. As we told you before, it isn't decided by the government if the information is sensitive or not. There is a court which is independent, and this court is deciding. Thank you.
Greece, 63. Wait for the microphone to turn on.
Thank you, Madam President. In ICD, the committee is noting with regret that information is not always fully reliable. But then in OC3 and ICI, they state that they support anonymity, although this makes it difficult to prove if something's reliable. Isn't that a bit contradictory?
The Netherlands.
Thank you, Mrs. President. That the sources are anonymous doesn't make that you cannot check the information that is given. You can still do that. Thank you.
Belgium, 104. Wait for the microphone.
Thank you very much, Madam President. If I am right, I can state that you want to inform the public well, and that you want to check your sources to see if they're right. But you create a free cyberspace where the truthfulness can vary, and you promote anonymity, so it makes it harder to check your sources. How are you going to realize that correctly?
Spain.
Thank you, Madam President. In answer to this question, we must say that we do not create internet. We are realistic, and when we wrote our resolution, we knew that there was no earthly way of controlling every single piece of information that's published in the network, which means that what we did when writing our resolution was to keep these people that publish this information safe by keeping their privacy safe too. And then what we really promoted was criticism, was the critical spirit of saying, may I believe this that I'm reading? Or may I read something else, then compare and get the truth?
Cyprus, 51.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to start with OC number 12, and we talk about more transparency. As you stated in the factual section, that it's about open governments and less secrets. that means that the world will know what's going on with all the governments, and diplomacy will be sort of destroyed with these concepts. And all this massive information will be headed to the internet, and no one will actually know which is the real truth, which will lead to many confusion of the masses in the end, and making different parties without anyone actually knowing the truth.
Luxembourg.
Thank you, Madam President. We want the governments to publish their documents, and if you find their documents on their website, I think you'll trust them if they're signed. And we just want, if you want to get informed about something, that you should find it on the internet, and that you actually should be informed about what your government does. Because it can't be that only like 30 or 80 years after the decision, you only get done and informed about what they did, because you go to vote for your politics in your country, so you also want to know what they do. So this is a basic thing of democracy, to just know what they do, and that's why we want transparency.
Romania 26.
Thank you, Madam President. Regarding OC5, which says that journalists can publish reliable information without breaking EU law, even if the information concerns the government, I am wondering if the committee thinks that the government should have no secrets. Thank you.
Bulgaria.
Thank you, Madam President. In OC number 7, actually, and in the whole resolution, we say that the government's secret is the sensitive information.
This will be the last question. Hungary 92.
Thank you, Madam President. First, I would like to, I'm not quite sure that the committee knows this, but in OC6, they just supported online data sharing, as in movie downloading, game downloading, and music downloading, because information covers those three things. I'm not quite sure you knew that. The other thing I want to ask is that 7 and 8, that in 7, you don't want sensitive information to be published, and you just defined government secrets as sensitive information, and this would be quite a big problem in post-Soviet, post-Axis countries, because there are quite a lot of government secrets in those. Thank you.
Spain.
Thank you, Madam President. The delegate asked whether we were kind of in favor or against downloading music and films from the internet. But the truth is that that's not our topic. We just stated that internet is a sphere of free information sharing. Information sharing, not movie and music sharing. And regarding the second question the delegate asked, I wonder if you could rephrase it again, because I forgot.
Yes, Hungary.
Thank you, Madam President. Information covers movies, games and such. But I will rephrase my second question. It was that you said that government secrets are basically sensitive information, but you don't want sensitive information to be published. And in such countries as Germany, Hungary, Italy, which were post-Soviet or post-Axis, as in, you know what Axis is, right? Okay. The problems would arise if every such information concerning like a list of officers in those armies would see the daylight. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. State secrets are inside the category of sensitive information, and therefore we created an OC which specifies that these secrets must be revealed by their own government just to make them reliable in a reduced amount of time, which means that they will be known by the public in less years than they normally are.
Yes, Hungary.
Thank you, Madam President, but basically Bulgarian delegates from the committee, 2 questions ago, said that government secrets are sensitive information. So I don't know what Spain is talking about. Thank you.
Yes, Spain.
I'm really sorry if the delegate didn't understand me. I mean that it's a kind of sensitive information, which is like this is sensitive information which covers like all of this, and then between that space we find state secrets, and they are specified in our resolution.
Okay, we now end the open debate. Who from the General Assembly may I ask to hold a speech against this resolution? Please press the speak button. Don't raise your cards. (102) Austria.
Thank you, Madam President. So, I'm referring to the Committee on Civil Liberties, Justice and Home Affairs. You can find in the resolution almost all OCs which are pointless or senseless. Some of them, which have a sense, or which refer to the topic of the committee, are contradictory. I'm referring to OC5, where it says information concerns the just a moment. Breaking EU law must never be punished, even the information concerns the government. But in OC7 it says requested all information concerning human rights, the government actions and decisions be published except for sensitive information. But almost all government information is sensitive information, so this is contradictory. I want to give an example. There was an affair in Italy concerning Berlusconi. He had an affair with a woman. The woman gets a minister. Is it sensitive information? Is it government information? Yes, it is both. Further, they're referring to many sanctions, but that aren't defined ever. They're also referring to a charter. They're all the things which should be have solved by your committee. You pass it on to the European Union, or you pass it on to a charter which isn't explained properly. There are many contradictions further occur, referring to freedom of press and privacy. It was your topic, I know it, but you haven't successed to refer to both without referring to contradictions. The most embarrassing OC is OC 14, where it says instructs the President to forward the resolution to the European Parliament, the European Commission and the Council of Ministers. This is embarrassing, and so I call up all delegates who think that we need an unlimited freedom of press, but not in the way as the committee suggested, to vote against the resolution.
No clapping, please. We only applaud after a resolution has been accepted. Please. This is not my rule. Who from the committee may I ask to hold a speech in favor of the resolution? Spain.
Honorable Presidency, distinguished guests, and fellow delegates. First of all, I'd like to congratulate my fellow delegate who has done the speech against this resolution. We all think he's completely right in what concerns clause number 13. And delegates, do you know what's a secret? It's often said that who owns a secret owns a treasure. That in fact, when we are young and try to hide something from our moms, we probably won't get a treasure, but a deep trouble. And the things get even worse when we're talking about countries. When something happens inside a country, and this is not known by other people, we're vulnerating international human rights. The truth is that we debated for hours on this topic, because we had a balance in which we had to place privacy, freedom of press, and free access to information. So we decided that our first stone, which means privacy, should always be preserved. When we're talking about sources, when we're talking about journalists, and when we're talking about people that appear on those information. Then we have the issue of freedom of press, which we tackled by saying that the European Charter on Freedom of Press is a very big deal we should always bear in mind, and that journalists that provide the public with reliable and information that doesn't break the European Union laws must never be punished. And about access to information, I'm only going to echo some words. I don't know if you delegates know them, but information makes us free. And here in the European Union, we are all free citizens. So with this resolution, we place these three stones in a way that makes our balance an equilibrium balance. Equilibrium between the three most important pillars of democracy. We have privacy, we have freedom of press, and of course, we have free information sharing. The delegate that was here before me said that our resolution was contradictory. And he asked a question, of course, I'd like to answer. He said that Berlusconi had an affair with a girl. Of course, this is not sensitive information, as we said, as my colleague said in the open debate. This information must be known by the public. And he also said that we were talking about sanctions, but we didn't define sanctions. And I'd like to encourage this delegate to read our resolution, because sanctions are from the United Nations and from the governments. Unlike this delegate, I'd like to remind you delegates that your vote will be going to another balance. It's the balance on whether we respect or not international human rights. It's the balance on freedom of human rights, the freedom of press. It's the balance of the European Union. And you delegates, you have the power of inclining this balance towards the fair side. Thank you for your attention.
We will begin the vote now. You may vote abstention, in favor, or against. Now. With 62 votes in favor, 54 votes against, 17 abstentions, disapproval of the committee presidents, and the disapproval of candidate countries, this resolution has passed.